Joining me now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline, 97.3 ESPN.com, Sixers insider Michael Kaskey-Blomain. Tough loss for the 76ers last night, and then the thing that drives me the most nuts. And Mike, I appreciate you joining me today because I am so exasperated. Didn't we just hear for about a month and a half how the Wizards are going to blow it up, blow the whole team up, and they're the ones would end up with Trevor Ariza? How on earth did the Wizards get Ariza and the Sixers didn't give a whiff of any of this?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy last night, Josh, how obviously the trade was initially reported and then it fell through because there was a misunderstanding about which Brooks was going to be included in the deal. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that. But, yeah, I mean, like the Wizards were long reported to be sellers. There were, reports that they were trying to, that they were willing to move on from Brad Beal and John Wall for the right price. I think, that was always going to be a tough proposition, especially considering John Wall's contract. I think the Wizards are in a place where they're almost, kind of stuck with what they are. Like Brad Beal would obviously be, an attractive trade candidate that I think that they could probably get a decent amount back for. But they have a lot of contracts out to other guys. Otto Porter has a large contract. Obviously, the John Wall max contract didn't even kick in yet. So I think that they're at this spot where they have these guys that they kind of can compete with, but not good enough. And they played a little bit better as of the past few weeks than the beginning of the season when they were, absolutely awful. So I think, they just kind of rolled the dice. The East, the bottom half of the East, after the top five is pretty open. If they can, play some 500 ball for the rest of the season, they could easily slide into one of those lower playoff spots. And then, I guess they think anything could happen in the playoffs. But Ariza obviously is a guy that would have been great in Philly. He's already been in Washington. He's probably played some of the best ball of his career with the Wizards a few seasons ago. So in that regard, it makes sense. But it's definitely a little frustrating, or at least disappointing for, Sixers fans. Obviously, Kyle Korver was traded a couple weeks ago. Not that necessarily he would have been, the perfect fit here, but he was a guy that was mentioned as, a potential target for the Sixers. He's off the board now. Ariza, who would have, definitely been a great fit for what this team needs right now, is off the board. So, eventually you hope that, the Sixers make a deal to, obviously strengthen the bench. Or you thought Ariza could have been that guy, but, now he's going to one of their main competitors in the conference.
We heard Elton Brand say about the Jimmy Butler trade. Oh, I was calling the Timberwolves GM every day. Hey, this is Elton Brand with your daily call, right? Well, now the Jimmy Butler deal is done, are they sitting back and waiting? Are they trying to assess the entire NBA? Are they waiting for the buyouts start happening? And what exactly are the Sixers waiting for? Because it seems like they were dead set proactive when it came to getting Jimmy Butler, but since then it seems like from the outside looking in that they're sitting on their hands.
It does. I mean, it does feel like that. And the Jimmy Butler move obviously was the first, a really big domino to fall, but that wasn't the end of Elton's work. That obviously was a great trade to get a player the caliber of Jimmy Butler. We've already seen what he's capable of doing, in the clutch, hitting shots, playing defense. But, we traded two starters for one, obviously in Rocco and Dario to get Jimmy. And then, when Jimmy's out like he has been the past couple of games, it really, really shows the lack of depth this team has. So I think that, while acquiring Jimmy was a huge piece of the puzzle to make this team a better potential championship team moving forward, it was really kind of strengthen the whole second half of the team. It's pretty top-heavy right now, more so than most of the other contenders this season. But in fairness, today being December 15th was the first day that players that were just signed over the offseason could be moved. So technically, like a player like Ariza, today was the first day that he could be traded, and obviously the Sixers didn't hop on that at midnight like the Wizards did last night. But, there's about 2 months between now and the trade deadline in mid-February. A lot of conversations are going to happen between then. I certainly expect Elton and the Sixers to be active in conversations leading up to then. So I'm not completely ready to say that I think that they're just sitting on their hands and not doing anything. But, there is some urgency now that it's December 15th. These players are finally available, and they're getting snatched up. As we see, Ariza was barely even on the market to be traded when he got traded. So, the clock is ticking basically now.
Mike, watching that game last night with Wilson Chandler getting 0 points and the fact that it just feels like the Sixers, they just don't have the depth. And I know we got time. It's not even Christmas yet. The trade deadline is in February, but I think that from my perspective and the perspective of a lot of Sixers fans, I think people would just feel better, Mike, if they made another move to get some more depth in here because, watching that game last night, Joel Embiid had 40 and 20. Ben Simmons, for all intents and purposes, another very good defensive game. You have all this talent in those two guys. And even when Butler's out there, Butler, Jimmy buckets, the clutchness, the defense, all the talent that those three have. But we've seen in the past, having a big three is not enough. You got to have a supporting cast. So I think for a lot of fans, it's hard to tell them be patient when you see a game like last night. If there was just one more body coming off the bench, whether it was an Ariza or a Corver or fill in the blank guy. I mean, I know some Sixer fans were asking me about Kelly Oubre. I've heard guys asking me about Markelle Fultz, for example. There are guys out there that you look around the NBA and you think, man, that guy would look really good in a Sixer uniform.
Absolutely, Josh. I think, it's almost ironic because you see so many people talking about, the things that Embiid needs to do, the things that Simmons needs to do. At the end of the day, to me, both of those guys have been fantastic this season. They've taken steps forward in their games. They've done, pretty much everything that you could ask for from these guys. And like you said, the team is just really top-heavy. When you look at a guy like Wilson Chandler, playing 30 minutes for the team last night and not scoring, Wilson Chandler was a guy that, they bring in and you think, all right, that's a solid bench addition to maybe give you 10, 15 minutes a game, not to be a starter in a rotation of a contender and play 30 minutes. And I think that's the issue they have right now. They have too many guys punching over their weight. Furkan Korkmaz has shown great strides this season. He looks a lot better than he did last year. He looks better defensively. He's more confident shooting. But he's not a starter in the NBA yet, and he's the guy that's filling in for Jimmy Butler when Butler's out. And you could say the same for Landry Shamet. I love what he's shown. As a rookie, he surprised us all, shows like he can, potentially be a great piece moving forward. But he's still a rookie, and he's getting torched defensively, and he's playing too many minutes just because they don't have anyone else to look. So I think that's, your point is absolutely taken, that they need more NBA caliber guys on the bench, like, a Morris, a Markelle or a Marcus Morris, a guy like a Justin Holiday, just, guys that are NBA players that don't have to be big flashy names, but then come in and kind of bump everyone back on this team to a role that they're better suited for. Because I think both of these past two games, the team wins if Jimmy's playing, but like I said earlier, just when he's in there now with, Rocco and Dario in Minnesota, it just shows how thin this team is in terms of guys that you can really, put in and expect to contribute outside of, the big three, and then JJ for his ability to shoot, makes him a plus player. And then other than that, you have a lot of guys that, on any given night could be a net negative, and that's just not a formula for a contender.
On Twitter, the real Mike KB, our 97.3 ESPN.com Sixers Insider, join us on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Mike, you and I talked about this on Monday, and I want to bring this up again because I feel like people are either just they're not watching basketball, or they're just so thick-skulled that they don't want to think about anything except for what their opinion is about Joel Embiid. This idea that there's a potential beef between Embiid and Butler, or between Embiid and Brown, or that Embiid has a problem with the team, or Butler, but this stuff is all hogwash. And you would know better than even me because you see this team in person, in the locker room. When Embiid said what he said, I never, ever, ever took that as beef. I took that as a young star in this league being honest about his role and how he's being used. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that during a Sixers game, when Embiid is asked to be outside, stretched out to the perimeter too often, it hurts the defense, it hurts the rebounding, it hurts the offensive efficiency. Embiid was just stating the same thing that Chris Bosh said in Miami, that Kevin Garnett said with the Celtics, that Kevin Love said with the Cavs, that when you have a new star, when you have guys learning to play together, you have to learn your roles, and it's hard. We get on Embiid, I think, only because his name is Embiid. But when Kevin Garnett, Chris Bosh, Kevin Love all said the same thing when they got to play with a new star, nobody got on them the way people are acting like Embiid has the beef. To me, Mike, there is no beef here. Embiid was just stating reality. Why is everyone obsessed with creating drama when I don't see any?
Josh, because it's 2018. That's just been the way it is. Everyone loves drama.
That's not a good enough excuse for me. But keep going.
In fairness, I think it's a combination of Embiid's quotes. They were, he said what he said. He was clearly unhappy. I think the issue was that it was taken to mean something that it wasn't. He's an extremely competitive guy. He had played poorly a couple games in a row. He was. The ironic thing for me is, if you know the Sixers offense, yes, he is asked to be out on the perimeter a lot, but a lot of it is, kind of in the flow of, the game. You read things as it goes, and a lot of the complaints of people sometimes is that Joel settles for threes too much, and they would like to see him in the post more. So to hear his complaint of that, to me, it really was just him kind of being frustrated and venting. And in the the media atmosphere of 2018, combined with the fact that there's this national narrative that Jimmy Butler is sort of this cancer that can't get along with younger teammates, I think that the fact that it was Jimmy really kind of added fuel to this fire coming off of the situation with Karl Towns in Minnesota. Obviously there's a lot of similarities between the Embiid and Towns in terms of their game, their age. Obviously Embiid's a better player, especially defensively and whatnot. But I think the people just wanted to run with that idea that, Jimmy Butler comes to Philly and now he's going to, blow up another team just like he did in Minnesota. It's an easy story to run with. But, I've been in the locker room of, these recent home games, even in the losses, and the team is obviously, no one's happy with losing, but there's no, there's no added tension, or Jimmy's around there joking, hanging out with everyone. There's no animosity that you sense more so than the regular level. And I think if you ask Joel if he would rather, put up 40 points and 20 rebounds in a loss like he did last night, or, put up 25 and 12 in a win like they were doing when Jimmy was out on the floor, I think he would take the win any day of the week. So, no, I definitely agree with you. I think it's it was overblown, and at least from what I've seen firsthand in and around the team since that initial report came out, there's no, added animosity other than the fact that, nobody likes to lose these past couple of games, and they want to, get everyone healthy and get the rotation back cracking. But there's no, no individual beefs that I've seen, certainly.
Speaking of Butler, first of all, for those who haven't heard the JJ Redick podcast, Jimmy Butler, I went from being a huge Jimmy Butler fan to basically going to put a poster of this guy on my wall. I'm a 33-year-old man. I feel like this guy was born for the city of Philadelphia. I love it when he says, I love confrontation. I love it when he says, I love a minivan because I don't need to spend my money on a bunch of cars. I love it when this guy's story about how, he went to a cabin in the middle of nowhere, had no technology, and all he did was play basketball and he got better. Everything about this guy screams hardworking, Philly guy, superstar, made man. And I think it's so refreshing that we're finally getting his side of things because, as you said, people have painted this guy to be some cancer, some villain. Look, I agree with him. There's nothing wrong with wanting to win. And for him, he feels like everyone should want to win as much as he does. I don't think it's a cancer. I don't think it's a problem. I think the problem might be the fact that he just hasn't played with the right people. And I think now, with a guy in Embiid who works hard, a guy like Simmons who is supremely talented, and the Sixers organization, I think this may be the perfect fit for Butler.
I would agree with you, Josh. And also, I think he, it's a good situation for him, too, because he's kind of, whether or not this is his own doing, as you kind of just touched on, but he's almost on his, I don't want to say his third strike, but he's on his third team. And, if for whatever reason, things didn't go well for him in Philadelphia due to, he left Chicago on kind of a sour note, obviously left Minnesota on a very sour public note. So I think he knows that, in Philly, not that he wouldn't get paid somewhere, but, this is his one team that can pay him the max for the last time in his career. He's 28 years old, probably going to be, this summer will be the last time he gets, a max contract in his career. So that he's been on his best behavior, but I think he also knows that, the perception is out there. But I definitely agree with you that he seems like he's, perfectly made for Philadelphia in terms of the hard-nosed, gritty attitude to the game. He seems like a throwback player. He reminds me of a guy from, like the 90s style basketball, a little bit more hard-nosed, a little bit more, get in your face, not really afraid to be confrontational, not afraid to, play tough basketball on both ends of the floor. A guy that can get his own bucket in isolation, almost kind of like a throwback player, but because he's so versatile and talented and has a high IQ, he fits really well into today's game also. Has improved his three-point shot over the years since he was drafted, which has really helped him fit in today's game as well, too. So I think, like you said, too, there's already a structure in place in Philadelphia before he got here. There's a clear hierarchy where, Brett Brown is well-respected in the organization, well-respected by the players. Embiid is established as the young superstar of the team, the centerpiece, one of the best young players in the league. And then obviously Simmons is in a similar situation. I think Butler knows and respects that coming in, so it's not like he has to come in and kind of teach these guys how to win, I think, which is what he was sort of expected to do a little bit in Minnesota. The Sixers, obviously, not that they won a title or anything, but they got to, the conference semifinals in Simmons' rookie year and Embiid's second year. So I think this team already kind of knows how to win, and it's not the same expectations on Jimmy. He can kind of just come in, fit in, play his game, and bring, what he does best, and it happens to be a reflection of, what the city really likes in his athletes. So as long as he doesn't wear thin on any of the teammates, which is his approach to the game, which it doesn't seem like he will because all of the Sixers core players are, similarly focused and motivated, I think it could be a great long-term fit for sure.
All right, Mike, one more for you. Appreciate your time here on Sports Bash Saturday 97.3 ESPN. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the Markelle Fultz story, the Washington Post. Some really damning information about the people who are in Markelle Fultz's life. His mother, different people he's been around. It gets back to all I keep hearing in my mind is when Joel Embiid said earlier this year, Mike, that he was concerned about the people who are around Markelle Fultz in his life. And I know for a lot of people, they dismissed it because, it's Embiid. Embiid says a lot of stuff. But I really took that to heart because, Embiid is a guy who has himself been very sensitive about who he trusts around himself, especially after his brother's death. And, for Markelle Fultz, I have been saying for a while, you've heard me, Mike, that, I'm concerned about the people who are around him. A lot of times the people who are around athletes, look at the Lamar Odom, look at Antoine Walker, look at Andre Rison back in the day. There's so many athletes who they've been around the wrong people, and it has derailed not just their careers, but their entire lives. And, this guy is only 20 years old, and if he has this much chaos and this many issues in his personal life, it makes it so much more understandable that his situation on the court is even more complicated than people are willing to let on.
Absolutely, Josh, and it makes you, kind of think, not to underscore the physical issues, but with all that going on, like you said, it's almost a little more understandable to wonder, the mental aspect of what's going on. And again, it gets sticky, speculating about someone's situation. And I don't have any inside information about Markelle's home situation at all outside of, the reports and what we've heard. But the expression goes, where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's been multiple times now we've heard comments offhand, what Joel said earlier this year, last season, other comments and reports about the people close to Markelle. I think, like you said, initially it was kind of easy to brush those off because there wasn't, direct proof or anything like that. But as these reports and things continue to mount, it does seem clear that there's at least something, going on behind the scenes, behind the curtain, off the floor that we, maybe don't know about that could be, certainly impacting his play and his mental, his mental state. That's certainly not to say that there's nothing going on. Obviously, we hope that the rehab in California is going well right now. We, hope for an update on that in the next couple weeks. But, this just adds another layer to what has been, one of the most bizarre unfolding stories in, recent NBA memory.
Give a follow on Twitter at @TheRealMikeKB, our 97.3 ESPN.com Sixers insider. Mike, appreciate your time today. And, I keep having to try to rationalize with so many people in an irrational world about all these guys. And I appreciate you coming on and at least giving us some clarity to some of these different topics for the Sixers today.
Man, it was a pleasure to talk to you, Josh. Thanks for having me on.